Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Cookout Southern 500. Great weather is coming, I can promise you that. But we're joined this morning by our honorary race official, Terry Labonte, NASCAR Hall of Famer, class of 2016. He is the two-time NASCAR Cup Series champion in 1984 and 1996. And he also won his first Cup race in the 1980 Southern 500 and his last Cup race in the 2003 Southern 500. So please join me in welcoming Terry Labonte as today's honorary race official. So Terry, what's it feel like to be back at Darlington Raceway?
It's exciting to come down here. This has always been one of my favorite tracks. It's also where I ran my very first NASCAR race, so it's always been a pretty special track, and so it's just nice to be. I guess this is the first race I've been to since before the COVID, and so it's nice to see all the fans back and everybody back and everything get back to normal. So it's all good.
When you think back to that first Cup win in 1980, what do you remember from that race?
Well, it was a deal. I remember we went down in turn one, and somebody had dumped some oil or water on the track, and two or three of the cars got in it and brushed the wall, and two or three made it through there and didn't. And I was one that didn't hit anything, and I beat. And David Pearson had bounced off the wall down there, and so I don't think he ever saw me coming, and so I caught him coming through 3 and 4, and beat him by half a fender to the white flag, which was also the caution. Back then, you raced back to the caution. So at that point, it was kind of over. So it was over. So anyway, so that was that one. So that was a pretty exciting Southern 500. It's always a tough track, and it's tough to stay out of trouble and run the whole race without getting tore up. And so you got to be there at the finish to have an opportunity at a good finish.
Now 23 years later, you had your last Cup victory here. What was the big difference in that celebration from the first one?
Well, I didn't realize that was going to be my last win, or I would have just retired that afternoon. But to go between 23 years between wins, it's like, well, how do you do that? And but we did. We were able to accomplish that, and so I was glad that we were able to get back in victory lane. It had been a few years since we had won a race, and so it was just one of those days that the guys on our Hendrick team just had a fantastic pit stop, and we had a great car all day and ran well all day long, and got out front at the end, and were able to hold everybody off. So it was a good day.
Great. We'll open up for questions. We'll get Mike up front.
Mike Hembry, NDC. You mentioned, Terry, you came down here in '78, never raced a Cup race. To the astonishment of most of us who were here, you finished 4th. Were you that surprised at how that happened, or how it almost looked easy, but you'd never done this before? What are your memories of all that?
Well, I wasn't smart enough to look at the scoreboard to see what my car number up there. But I kept looking up there to see how many laps were left, because I thought this is the longest race I've ever run in my life. And having raced on half-mile tracks, and a 200-lapper is the longest race I'd ever run before, and I came down here, and I'm like, my God, this race lasted forever. And we finished 4th. And I'm like, I never even thought to look at the car number. I just looked at the laps, like, how many more laps is this thing, But it went on forever, it seemed like. And but yeah, and then I think I went the next week, and we finished in the top 10. I think it was at Richmond or something. I thought, man, I think I'm gonna like this, but it was, we got off to a pretty good start, and it's really funny when we came down here to run at Darlington. I was driving for Billy Hagan, and Billy called me. He said, "Hey, we're gonna go to Darlington and run Southern 500," and I said, "Billy, I'd really, think maybe I'd be better off to start at like Martinsville or Wilkesboro, or a half-mile track or something that I'm kind of used to running." He said, "Oh, we're going to go there too, but we're going to go to Darlington first." I said, "Okay." So here we came, So we came down here.
A lot of stuff has changed, obviously, since you quit. How do you see the playoff system? Could you have done well in the way it's set up now?
I don't know. I don't know. The playoff deal is tough, and you can really look at it, and back with the old point system when I raced, you had a little bit of a cushion there if you had a bad race or a flat tire or something at a bad time. Now you could have a flat tire, just one flat tire at the wrong time, and it could completely knock you out of the playoffs. And so it's a lot different, and it makes it tougher. I think to me, it's that making that cut every 3 races or so. That puts a lot of pressure on everybody, and so you can't make any mistakes, no mistakes at all. You don't want to get caught up in somebody else's wreck, and just the variety of the tracks that you're going to. It's hard. There's no doubt about it.
Cool. We'll go to Ben and then Greg.
Ben White, a Fayetteville Observer. Terry, 367 laps around this place. When you're going into this race, what's your mindset? Because, I've heard other drivers say you really got to concentrate. You can't let your mind drift. Do you agree with that? Because, it's such a tricky racetrack, right?
It's a really hard racetrack, and it's a fast track, and you think about how narrow it is. Of course, you see a lot of asphalt out there that you can't use, but the racing surface is really pretty narrow, and the speeds are extremely fast compared to years ago when they first built the track. So I've always felt like it's a track that you really have to race the track as much as you do the competitors, just because I've been down here and tested before at different times, and I thought, it'd be hard to go out here and run 500 miles as hard as you could and not brush the wall, And so you've got to just concentrate the whole time and just, try not to make any mistakes, because this place will definitely reach out and grab you. You come off of turn 2 over here, and, there's a bump right there. And if you don't have your car lined up right, it's gonna move a little bit on you. So it's a tough track, no doubt about it.
We'll go to Greg.
Hey, Terry. Greg Engel, Forbes. When you look at the young drivers today, the point system aside and all that junk, you were named as one of the first, the 50 greatest drivers in '98, I think it was, '99. That's because I was just a fan then. I loved you to death and all the, the Tony the Tiger junk and all that. Who do you think among the youngsters you see today could belong in the next 50 greatest drivers?
Oh, well, I think that the first one that comes to mind is Kyle Larson. He's just a fantastic talent. You've ever watched him run a sprint car or a dirt late model or a cup car or anything? He is just extremely talented and just very good. Chase Elliott's another one I think that is just really, really good. And, of course, Chase, won a championship, and, he's definitely going to be in the hunt for this one too. So, I don't know, you can just going down the list. I think it really says something when you have had so many different winners this year. There's more than more than I guess they've ever had. And in a single season, that's amazing that they've had that many different winners. And, Tyler Reddick, he's very talented and, driving for Childress. And so there's a lot of guys that you can look at and say, man, these guys are really good. So I could go on and on probably, but I don't know. There's a lot of them that are good for sure.
Cool. We'll go to Reggie.
Reggie Anderson, WLTX TV in Columbia. 2 questions. One, your personality, did it fit this track where you're able to stay even keel for all those miles? And also, does it mean more for you, given your history here, that this track is back to having 2 events on the Cup schedule each year?
Oh, well, I don't know. You just always this is a track I think that, you've got to be pretty smooth at, you've got to be a little patient at, and you got to really stay on your toes and concentrate the whole race, because it's so fast, and the wall can just kind of reach out and get you sometimes. But it's great to see them back with 2 races back here. I was really the last Southern 500. At that time they were going to end the Labor Day weekend, and I was like, man, really bummed out, because to me this is I kind of like history and things like that. And to me, the Southern 500 Labor Day weekend was it had to be. They couldn't move that. So I'm glad it's back. I'm glad they got 2 races now, and I'm glad they got a sold-out crowd. So it should be a good event.
Cool. We'll go one more for Jordan.
Jordan Bianchi, The Athletic. I have another question about a different NASCAR track that's been around for a long time, Talladega. Wondering if you've heard the stories about that place being haunted, and if you've had any unusual experiences there over the years.
Yeah, I heard some of that, but I never really experienced anything. Yeah.
Apparently it's haunted. It's built on an old Indian burial ground.
Yeah, I've heard that. I don't know if it's true or not, so don't know.
Any final questions? Oh, we'll get Hunter.
Hey, Terry, Hunter Thomas with thefourthturn.com. I know you can't really compare generations, but with this new car having the durability it has, kind of bouncing off the wall, and, you know, drivers really being able to race each other really hard, do you kind of see reminiscent of kind of the 90s of when you were racing a little bit?
Well, you know, you went through a kind of an era there where here just recently, I mean, if you bent the fender in the car, or the quarter panel or something like that, it would have a real big effect aerodynamically, and it could really mess up your day with just a small little bit of damage. And years ago, the cars weren't quite as aero sensitive, and then today with these cars, it looks like you can kind of, you know, maybe bump a little bit, but you know, the rear suspension looks like kind of the weak link to it, and you know, you can't bump much or get bumped much in the back end. That'll knock your rear toe out or something. But yeah, I do like I think the new car it's obvious, you know, with all the different winners, and if you look at the races, you know, for the majority of the tracks, I think it's really been some really good shows. And you know, there's some tracks that they probably need to try to tweak the rules and stuff to try to make it a little bit better on some of the places. But overall, I think it's got to be a pretty big success with what I've seen. So.
And for our last question, we'll go back to Barry.
Yeah, Barry Richmond, Piedmont Broadcasting Corporation. I had an interview years ago with your former teammate, Jeff Gordon, and I remember when he made the transition from Busch Grand National to the Cup Series, one of the quotes he said was, "We want to do good for Mr. Hendrick, but we don't want to set the world on fire." I know that from his standpoint, he probably didn't know that he would be a pace setter. Looking at your great career as well, did the things you accomplished are the same things you had set out to accomplish, or were you surprised about how well things went for you in your Cup Series experience?
Well, I'll tell you, to be quite honest with you, when I had the opportunity to move to North Carolina and go run some Cup races, I had no idea if I'd run 5 races or, you know, finish the year or another year or whatever. I mean, you just don't ever know. And, you know, as it turned out, for the opportunity that I had to race in the series as long as I did was, you know, really amazing. And to be able to win a couple of championships, you know, was really special. And so I won my first championship in '84, and I thought, man, this is really good. We've got a great team. I think we have a chance to win it again next year. And we didn't win it in '85, and then same thing in '86, and we didn't win it in '86. And so I kept waiting for the next year, and it took 12 years for that next year to get there. But yeah, it was just I wouldn't trade a thing. You know, I enjoyed the time I had in racing, and I was really fortunate to race a lot longer than a lot of people have had the opportunity to do, and was able to do a lot of things because of racing. So it's I certainly don't have any regrets, and I enjoyed 99% of it. So.
Well, Terry, thanks so much for being here, and I hope you have a great experience tonight as the honorary race official.
All right. Well, thank you.